Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Deontay Wilder, Joseph Parker, all weighed in and ready to go. So this is the co-main event of the Day of Reckoning event in Saudi Arabia. Not too long to go now. Joseph Parker was 245 pounds on the scale, more than 30 pounds heavier than Deontay Wilder, who came in at 213 pounds, which is actually a pretty typical weight for Deontay Wilder across his career at world level. So, there's a few things to talk about this fight, especially in regards to the tactics, because we've seen before guys who want to try to bully Deontay Wilder or guys who want to box and move, generally, for the most part, have ended up on the seat of their pants on the canvas. And Joseph Parker's weight suggests that he wants to be a bit more aggressive and potentially use that weight advantage. I had seen a New Zealand media article that had stated that Parker's weight suggested that he would probably look to box and move a bit more than his last couple of fights where he was 5 pounds heavier. But historically, Joseph Parker at 245 pounds, he's actually been more immobile. When Parker's been 238 to 242, that's where he's been in box and move mode. So perhaps we're going to see a fight where Joseph Parker is going to look to be aggressive in spots, but I don't think this is going to be any sort of high output sort of fight. And Deontay Wilder doesn't fight those sorts of fights for the most part. Generally, he's pretty economical, and so too for Parker. Generally, he does like to fight in bursts, throw off a couple of jabs, right hand, reset, circle, and not waste too much energy. So what we could end up seeing with this fight is both these guys looking for opportunities, but a little bit of a lull in between flurries. And let's be honest, historically for opponents of Deontay Wilder, that's been good for Wilder, who can actually, with his height and reach, he'll generally sort of stay on the outside, look to sort of launch himself across the ring with that quick right hand, and eventually he finds the target. So I have no doubt that Joseph Parker, at a record of 33-3, will look pretty decent early on. It's going to be evident, I think, that there's a skills gap because, let's face it, Joseph Parker is the better technical boxer. But there is a massive power disadvantage. He might be the guy that's 30 pounds heavier, but Deontay Wilder with that right hand is dangerous at any point in the fight. And we've seen him put guys down late, including the likes of Tyson Fury in that first fight. He was so close to winning that one. Ultimately, it was a draw. But you have a situation, if Parker is going to try to be aggressive, he is going to try to get up on Deontay Wilder's chest, as Tyson Fury did in the second and third fights. That's not without danger. And let's remember, Joseph Parker isn't exactly known to be a inside fighting specialist. So when we have seen him try to, fight on the inside in a lot of fights, it's actually ended up being a bit scrappy and a bit ugly. And I'm not talking about the fights like Simon Keane and the stoppage of Whainga Opilu. Those guys are fighting at a certain level. Deontay Wilder is a different kettle of fish, and he can hit hard even from just 6 inches to a foot away. We've seen him deliver short right hands that hurt guys. So Parker's going to have to be careful wherever he is, but if he gets on the inside, he is going to have to work to some degree. In the past, we've seen a situation where Parker will tie up, and there's almost like a silent agreement that him and his opponent aren't throwing anything. But I guess one interesting thing heading into this fight, and Deontay Wilder had Junior Farr in his camp for this fight. He's actually been in a few Deontay Wilder camps, but as we know, Parker and Farr have fought before. And that ended up being one of those sort of typical fights that I described where Parker, a lot of tying up. So if he is going to try to get to the inside, he's going to have to make it count. And I guess one thing that a lot of people always talk about is, are people going to try to work Deontay Wilder to the body, try to, really sap his energy? But regardless, Parker's going to have to be careful wherever he is. I kind of expect the story of the fight to play out with Parker sort of boxing and moving to some extent in the early rounds and probably, picking up rounds. And we've seen this before with Wilder opponents. Wilder's happy to give away some of those early rounds because he says, you have to be perfect for 12 rounds. All I need is, one punch, just a couple of seconds, and I can get that shot in that's going to end the night. And let's face it, there are some open questions with this fight for both guys. Deontay Wilder's been out of the ring for a year now, and the action that he had a year ago was one round of action against Robert Helenius. Prior to that, it was, he's only had one round of action in a couple of years. The Tyson Fury fight, and the question with those Tyson Fury fights, the third one where he got sparked out, he was dropped a few times, put Fury down as well. What's that taken from him? And you have a situation now that Deontay Wilder is 38 years old. He is inactive. He has been in the past injury prone, multiple surgeries. Where does this inactivity leave him in terms of his current form? Obviously with a power puncher, especially an aging one, the power is the last to go. So he is always going to be dangerous. But, there's question marks about, well, where's he really at? And we are going to find out. And let's face it, a lot on the line for Wilder with all this talk of a potential fight with Anthony Joshua. Look, we've heard that before. We've been there, done that, got the postcard. It's been talked about for so many years now. But they are talking in March 2024. And if that was to occur, he's got to get through Parker. And if he gets through Parker, then the question will become, well, how did he look? Was there any chinks in the armor, all that sort of stuff? Did he look his usual self? Well, we're going to see. Deontay Wilder, I think the right hand, his sort of avenue to victory is stopping Joseph Parker. Because if it is a case that it goes 12 rounds, would he be able to rack up enough rounds? We'll see. I think for Joseph Parker, he's, there's two possible paths to victory. Is going in there, being aggressive, trying to stop Deontay Wilder. That's easier said than done. Or the other often sort of way that other guys have tried to beat Wilder, which is sort of fraught with danger, is boxing and moving. Can he actually go 12 rounds and not take something? I think the answer is probably no. And questions with Parker abound as well. Remembering he was stopped by Joe Joyce. He took a lot of punishment in that fight. Horrible strategy to go in there, super heavy. He looked gassed early on and ultimately got, beaten up and taken out. What's he got left? And also 31 years old at this point. He's got bad elbows, a lot of injury history with those elbows, and that's something that is often not really sort of commented on when people are doing videos talking about Parker, that sort of stuff. People will say he's young, he's healthy, but how healthy? Because I think once his career is all said and done, there's going to be a lot of talk probably coming from Parker about how he struggled with injury, especially with those elbows, and at times it was pretty hard to actually, spar and other things. We've already had elements and stories of like that, and Parker has said for certain fights the elbows have been a real trouble. And previously, at a certain point in his career, Parker had said he wanted to retire at age 30, 31. More recently, he said maybe it could be 35, but after the Joyce knockout, it looked like a bit of a long road back. And now you have a situation after a couple of tune-up fights, essentially. He's put himself back into the mix. Activity has been his friend in 2023. Maybe they weren't the greatest opponents, but he's been active, and it's put him in the shop window to get this fight. So it's all upside for Joseph Parker. So even if he loses and decides to sail off into the sunset, he's going to get a huge payday. And if he wins, obviously it sets up a massive fight, either with a rematch or with something else. It puts him right back in contention for a title shot, for huge money, all that sort of stuff. So I'm sure there's a lot of motivation for Parker, but so too Wilder. And Deontay Wilder will want to prove that he is the guy that is still, the threat in the heavyweight division, the guy that is the most dangerous puncher out there, even at 38 years old. And if he goes into a fight with Anthony Joshua, he wants to go in there with some confidence, with a victory, having looked good. So there is a lot on the line, because ultimately it could end up influencing all sorts of things. So Wilder and Parker, a lot on the line, a lot of motivation. Parker especially has been talking about the opportunity. Deontay Wilder been a little bit more philosophical, less enraged than some of his previous build-ups. And let's face it, these guys, there's not a lot of animosity there. And sometimes, look, it doesn't have to. It's still a decent fight. And if Wilder beats Parker, it is one of the best wins of his career. because Wilder's resume at world level in terms of the opponents when he was WBC champion wasn't always the strongest opposition. This would be probably in line or somewhere maybe just below or around the same level as the Luis Ortiz wins. But after Ortiz wins, some of the quality of the opposition does dip a bit. So I guess, this opponent against an aging Wilder, who we've got question marks about where he's really at, but then so too question marks about Parker. The desire maybe, is where's he at? Did Joe Joyce permanently take some lumps and something from Parker? It's an intriguing fight for all these different reasons. But I think if it goes any length of time, Wilder should catch up with Parker and put a dent in him. And Parker, I think, sometimes has had underrated defense. He can be defensively responsible when he wants to be, but he's got to make those exchanges, especially if he gets close with Wilder, count. He's got to actually land some stuff to the body. The uppercut has always been a good punch for him, which we've rarely seen in recent years. It was seen against Simon Keane more recently in his last fight, but let's face it, Keane well below world level. Deontay Wilder, a different kettle of fish, bigger, longer, more powerful, and it's an intriguing fight. I've been mulling over these different scenarios for the past month. Parker has really got to land something telling. He doesn't have the most amount of power, but he's got to actually, land something flush and probably early. Because the longer the fight goes, Deontay Wilder is eventually going to land something. So Wilder deservedly goes into this fight as a favourite, but Joseph Parker is no slouch, and he does have a shot in this fight. But I am favouring Wilder to win this one. How about you? What do you think is going to happen? How, when, why, all that sort of stuff? What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.